In 1998, when I started at Protection and Advocacy, I was assigned as the advocate for Muscatatuck. About a year into my monitoring, if you will, and we monitor all the state hospitals, P&A did that, they failed an ICFMR survey and essentially became decertified. Department of Justice became a presence there, and they were mandated to close. There were, in my monitoring, we had seen the care of people becoming progressively worse. At one point, my supervisor and I walked onto a unit, and 12 of 14 people in that unit had noticeable bruises, black eyes. It was horrifying, and none of those injuries were recorded or documented. On another unit, I'd been there on Friday, I came back on Monday, and one of the clients had a broken limb, and nobody knew how it had occurred. The state put monitors in to hopefully fix things, but there wasn't any fixing it. It really, at the time Department of Justice came in, I had been approached by a staff person that worked there, who wanted me to intervene on an issue. The head psychologist was seeing the dentist at Muscatatuck. Not a big deal unless the following scenario happens. There was a young man on one of the units, one of the transitional housing units, very bright young man, probably not really developmentally delayed at all. Had some behavioral issues, had been abandoned by his folks, raised by grandparents, had anger issues, had some hoarding issues, that sort of thing. Probably much more the mental health issues than developmental issues. And he could very definitely tell you what he liked and didn't like. And initially, he didn't think much of me as an advocate, and he let me know that, and he had every right to let me know that. And then over time, I would stop in to see him because he could tell me what wasn't going well at that facility. He had teeth that needed fixing, and like many of us, hated going to the dentist and refused to go to the dentist. Didn't want to go to the dentist. He was not ill from this. I think if you took a poll in Indiana, there's probably a lot of people walking around with teeth rotting, quite frankly. However, the psychologist and the dentist, without including him, had made an appointment for him to go to up to IU Med Center under the guise of some medical treatment, when in reality they were going to put him under and have his teeth pulled while at IU. And then they would make sure he was under till they got him back to Muscatatuck. And the staff person, the case manager, was appalled, and rightly so. Human Rights had discussed it, we'd said no, and they were still going to go ahead with that plan. So that was one nugget of information that we could share with Department of Justice, and they were furious. Another thing that occurred, the restraints in Lincoln Hall were kept in this nice little bench. They had upgraded the appearance of the facility several times over the year. And so it was kind of a country, so it was a little country bench. When Department of Justice asked to see the restraints, they'd been put away with blood on them from the previous restraint. And so you can imagine it did not go well for Muscatatuck. And there were just so many stories. You cannot walk onto a unit and see visible injuries on 12 of 14 people that weren't there the week before and not suspect something is terribly wrong there. And these folks were nonverbal, so they're not going to be able to tell. On that same unit, I was in the nurse's office, and I witnessed a staff, and I would have never dreamed that this staff would do this. Bring somebody back from lunch, she didn't know I was there, and she slapped this guy around. I was just stunned. And it was a person that needed one-on-one. It doesn't justify it, but I know that she just was frustrated and tired, but still, and it was just very sad. And Yeah, I think the people that worked there enjoyed their jobs and liked it, and there were some really good staff. We started doing some night monitoring. There were just some, they didn't have enough staff. People were in jeopardy. There were injuries, unexplained injuries, and so the closure precipitated the state having to literally live down there and do a lot of monitoring and really, really watching folks, trying to keep them safe and getting people placed out pretty quickly.